"Baby, I'm sorry." The words hung in the air of the packed church, and 200 people held their breath. The bride stood at the altar in her simple white dress, hands trembling, eyes locked on the groom who'd gone pale as death. But to understand why a woman would stop her own wedding 90 seconds before saying, "I do," we need to go back. Back to where it all began. Back to the moment a billionaire decided to become nobody. See, the man standing at that altar was worth $340 million. But the woman he loved thought he was broke. Dead broke. Struggling to pay rent broke. And on this day, everything he'd been hiding for 2 years was about to explode in the most spectacular way possible. This is the story of the biggest gamble one man ever took with love. And I promise you, you won't believe how it ends. Before we dive in, do me a favor. If you're watching this on your phone right now, flip it to landscape mode because this story deserves your full screen. And here's the thing, 87% of you are watching without subscribing. If you love stories about love, betrayal, and redemption, hit that subscribe button right now. I'll wait. Good. Now, drop a ring emoji in the comments if you think you'd marry someone who was broke but had a good heart. Let's see where you stand. Alright, let's get into it. Monday morning, 6:47 a.m. The alarm screamed in a cramped apartment where roaches scattered when the light flicked on. The man who woke up there heated water in a dented pot for instant ramen because his microwave had died 3 weeks ago, and he couldn't afford to replace it. His phone buzzed. The screen lit up with an email subject line, "Urgent, Johnson Plaza acquisition. Needs signature on $40 million deal by noon." He silenced it, opened his lesson plans instead, checked his tie in a mirror so old the silver had worn off in patches. To his neighbors in the rundown building, he was just another substitute teacher barely scraping by. Another dreamer in a city full of them. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the phone buzzing on his nightstand connected him to an empire. He was the heir to one of the largest black-owned commercial real estate firms in the South. His family's company owned office buildings, shopping centers, luxury apartments across 5 states. The company his grandfather started with 2 buildings had grown into a $340 million legacy. His apartment, $850 a month, and that was pushing his budget. His car, a 2015 sedan with 140,000 miles, a check engine light that never turned off, and a passenger door that only opened from the outside. Why would a man worth more than most people would see in 10 lifetimes live like this? 2 years ago, his father had made him an offer. More than an offer, a challenge. "You'll inherit everything when I'm gone," his father had said. Standing in the executive office on the 40th floor, the city sprawled below them like a kingdom. Every building, every contract, every dollar. "But first, I need to know something. I need to know you can earn respect without the family name buying it for you. Prove you're worthy of this legacy. Not because you were born into it, but because you've earned the right to lead it." So he'd done something radical. He'd walked away, left the penthouse overlooking the city, donated his luxury cars to charity auctions, moved into a neighborhood where gunshots were white noise and corner stores had bulletproof glass. He took a job as a substitute teacher, started volunteering at the community center, reading to kids everyone else had labeled lost causes. And that's where he met her. She worked as an ICU nurse at the public hospital. The kind of nurse who could talk a dying patient into fighting for one more day, who could bring someone back from the edge through sheer force of will. She'd been raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. She understood struggle in her bones. They met on a Tuesday evening. He was at the community center, 20 minutes past the end of his volunteer shift, still sitting with a 9-year-old boy who couldn't read. The kid had been passed from grade to grade, social promoted because the system had given up. But this man hadn't. He stayed. 2 hours turned into 3. He stayed until the boy finally sounded out a complete sentence, until pride replaced shame in those young eyes. She'd been picking up her nephew from the same center. Watched this substitute teacher through the window, patient and kind, celebrating a small victory like it was the Super Bowl. Most men tried to impress her with what they had. This one impressed her with who he showed up for. Coffee dates at cheap diners followed. Movie nights streaming on her laptop because neither could afford theater tickets. Walks through the nature preserve because both were saving money. For 18 months, they built something real. Something that had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with showing up. 3 months ago, he'd proposed. Got down on one knee at that same nature preserve, hands shaking, with a simple silver band he'd bought from a pawn shop for $85. He had a 5-carat diamond sitting in a safe deposit box downtown. A ring that cost more than most people's cars. But he couldn't give it to her. Not without explaining everything. Not without risking that she'd look at him differently. She'd cried when he proposed. Real tears, the kind that come from joy so pure it physically hurts. "We don't need much," she'd whispered, sliding that simple band onto her finger. Just each other. And he'd felt his heart break and soar at the same time. Because she meant it. God, she really meant it. But also because he was lying to her. Every single day he was lying to the woman he loved. The lie had started as a test. A way to protect himself. But somewhere along the way it had become quicksand. The deeper he got, the harder it was to climb out. But here's where it gets complicated. Because her family had opinions. Strong opinions. And they weren't quiet about them. Sunday dinners at her mother's house were an endurance test. The house itself was small but immaculate. Every surface polished. Every corner loved. Her mother had clawed her way out of poverty through sheer determination. And she'd be damned if she'd watch her daughter slide back into it. "So," her mother would say, passing the smothered chicken with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "when you planning to get your principal's license? Make some real money?" Her uncle, always hustling, always looking for the next opportunity, would lean in with advice nobody asked for. "My boy, teaching is noble. Real noble. But nobility don't pay the mortgage, you feel me? I got a business opportunity, mobile car detailing. Small investment, big returns. You should think about it." And then there was her cousin. That woman didn't even pretend to respect the relationship. "Girl," she'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Dr. Peterson at the hospital is still asking about you. Just saying. Man's got his own practice, drives a Mercedes. No kids, fine as hell." Every Sunday was the same gauntlet. Every family gathering was a reminder that to them he wasn't enough. Would never be enough. Not for their daughter, their niece, their sister. He'd excuse himself to the bathroom during these dinners. Stand over the sink, gripping the edges, staring at his reflection. He could write a check right now that would pay off every mortgage on this block. Could hand her uncle enough money to start 10 businesses. Could make every single one of their concerns disappear with a phone call. Instead, he'd splash water on his face, swallow his pride, and go back to the table. Smile. Nod. Pretend their doubts didn't cut like knives. Because this was the test, wasn't it? This was what he'd signed up for. To be loved or not loved, for who he was without the safety net of wealth. But there was something he didn't know. A secret that would change everything. 1 week before the wedding, her mother did the unthinkable. She called a family meeting. All the women, daughters, sisters, cousins, aunts. Everyone except him. They gathered at her aunt's house, sitting in a living room where every photograph on the wall told a story of survival. Her mother stood like a general addressing troops. "Listen," she began, her voice heavy with love and worry. "I love him. He seems like a good man, kind, patient, treats my daughter like she's precious. But baby," she pulled out printed papers, bank statements, salary comparisons, retirement projections. "He's 32 years old, no property, no retirement account, no plan beyond next month's paycheck. Look at these numbers. Teacher salary versus nurse salary. Baby, you're going to be carrying him financially for the rest of your life." Her younger sister tried to defend him, but weakly. The cousin who'd been pushing the doctor was relentless. "I'm not saying he's a bad person," the cousin said, examining her nails. "I'm just saying, you deserve security. You've worked too hard to struggle." The aunt who'd hosted added her voice. "Remember your cousin Lisa? Married for love. Divorced 3 years later because love don't pay for the roof that's leaking or the car that won't start. Then came the ultimatum. Her mother's voice was soft but firm. We're not saying don't marry him. We're just asking for one thing. Wait, 1 year. Live together first. See what it's really like before you make it permanent. Make sure this is real, baby. Make sure he's ready to be a partner, not a burden. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Tears streaming down her face, she grabbed her purse. You don't understand, she said, voice shaking. You don't understand him at all. She walked out, drove home in silence, hands gripping the steering wheel. What she didn't know was that he'd been outside. He'd come to pick her up early, arrived just as the meeting started, stood by the window, heard every word, heard his worth, his whole existence, dissected and found wanting. The ride home after she called him was silent, dead silent. She stared out the window, he focused on the road, and the space between them felt like a canyon. They don't understand, she finally whispered. Maybe they're right to worry, he said, voice hollow. She turned on him then, fierce and sudden. Don't you dare. Don't you dare let them make you feel small. You are the best man I know. You show up. You care. You're building something that matters, even if it doesn't come with a 6-figure salary. He pulled over. Right there on the side of the road, he pulled over because he couldn't see through the tears. She unbuckled, reached across, held him while he broke. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Shut up, she said. You deserve everything. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that she was hiding something too. 3 weeks earlier, something had happened that changed the entire game. She was at work, end of a double shift, exhausted beyond words. Her coworker was talking about her husband's work in commercial real estate. Wait, the coworker had said mid-conversation. Your fiancé, what's his last name again? She'd told her. The coworker's eyes went wide. Girl, do you know who his family is? That night she'd gone home, sat on her apartment floor still in her scrubs, pulled out her laptop, typed his full name into the search bar. The results loaded. Photos, articles, society page features. There he was in a tuxedo at a charity gala, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine. There he was cutting a ribbon on a new building, his family's company logo behind him. There was an article about his family's net worth, estimated at over $300 million. She sat there for an hour, didn't cry, didn't call him, just thought. Then she did something that would define everything to come. She deleted her search history, closed the laptop, and decided never to mention it. Because here's what she understood that nobody else did. He had his reasons. Maybe he'd been hurt before. Maybe someone had loved him for his wallet instead of his heart. Maybe he was testing her. Or maybe, and this felt truest, he was testing himself. Either way, she wasn't in love with a last name or a bank account. She was in love with the man who stayed late to teach a kid to read, who brought her soup when she worked doubles, who knew how she took her coffee and which hymn made her cry in church. If he needed to live this way to figure out who he really was, she could wait. She could let him have his journey, because she'd already made her choice, and it had nothing to do with money. For 3 months, she'd known the truth, and for 3 months, she'd loved him anyway, exactly as he was. The night before the wedding, he sat in his apartment with his best friend. The friend was a corporate lawyer at one of the city's biggest firms, but for this charade, he'd been playing the role of a personal trainer. They sat on a thrift store couch, drinking cheap beer because that's what they could afford. Bro, his friend said, you have to tell her, this has gone too far. What if she changes? He asked, staring at the bottle in his hands. What if her family changes her? Then she wasn't the one, his friend replied. But here's the thing, man. You're making decisions for her. You're deciding what she can handle, what she deserves to know. That's not love. That's control dressed up as protection. The words hit like a punch. He'd never thought of it that way. Later that night, there was a knock. His father stood in the hallway, wearing coveralls and a janitor's cap. For tomorrow's wedding, the plan was for his parents to attend incognito. His father had committed fully to the role. "How do I look?" his father asked, striking a pose. "Uncle Pete the janitor at your service." They sat together, father and son, drinking whiskey from paper cups in an apartment that cost less than his father spent on cigars each month. "Your brother's girlfriend," his father said suddenly. "She didn't kill him, son. That accident did." He went still. They never talked about this. Never. His older brother had died in a car accident 6 years ago. 25 years old, whole life ahead of him. The girlfriend who'd been in the passenger seat survived. And 3 months after the funeral, she'd sued the family, claimed emotional distress, loss of future income from her would-be husband, every angle her lawyers could find. The family had settled for millions just to make it go away. He'd been 26 when it happened. It had poisoned every relationship since. He'd dated women who Googled his net worth before the second date. Women who suggested expensive restaurants and then forgot their wallets. Women who loved the lifestyle more than they'd ever loved him. "You've been punishing yourself," his father continued, "and every woman since, for something that wasn't your fault. That woman never loved your brother. But this one, the one you're marrying tomorrow? Son, I've watched her. She loves you, the real you. Let her." He broke then, 32 years old, sitting in a rundown apartment with his father dressed as a janitor, and he wept like a child, because this had never really been about testing her. It had been about his own fear of loss, his own inability to trust that love could be unconditional. Wedding day arrived with perfect weather. The historic church where her family had worshipped for 40 years stood beautiful in morning light. She got ready at her mother's house, bridesmaids fluttering around like butterflies. Her dress was simple, elegant, for $100 from a chain bridal store. No designer label, no custom anything, just a dress that made her feel beautiful. Her mother helped with the veil, tears already flowing. "Baby," her mother whispered, "I just want you to be safe, secure. I worked 3 jobs some years to give you better than I had." She took her mother's hands. "Mama, I know, but better isn't always about money. You taught me that. You taught me to value character over comfort. So let me do that." Her mother kissed her forehead, leaving a lipstick mark she didn't wipe away. Meanwhile, across town, he was shaking. His hands trembled so badly his best friend had to tie his tie 3 times. "You gonna tell her today?" his friend asked. "After the ceremony," he said. "I have a whole second reception planned. I'll tell her there. And if she walks away, then I'll deserve it." His father arrived with a gift box. Inside was a watch, his late brother's watch. "He'd want you to have this today," his father said. "For luck, for courage." He put it on with trembling fingers, and then he did something he hadn't done in 6 years. He let himself cry for his brother. Really cry. Let the grief out so there'd be room for joy. The church filled up. His wealthy family scattered throughout the pews, all dressed down, all committed to their roles. His mother wore a simple dress from a department store, probably the first time in 20 years she'd worn anything off the rack. His company's CFO sat in the back in khakis and a polo shirt, looking deeply uncomfortable. The organ played, the doors opened, and there she was. She walked down that aisle like she was walking into the rest of her life, and he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only watch this woman who'd chosen him, who he thought had chosen him despite his limitations, move toward him with absolute certainty in her eyes. The pastor began. The traditional words, spoken over countless couples in this sanctuary. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the sight of God and these witnesses." Everything was going according to plan. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Her family on one side, his humble family on the other. The church was full of love and hope and anticipation. Until it wasn't. Her cousin, sitting in the 3rd row, leaned over to whisper to her friend. But the church's acoustics were better than she realized, and her whisper carried. "Girl," the cousin hissed. "His car broke down last week. Had to catch the bus in his teacher clothes. She really out here marrying a project. I give it 2 years before she's drowning in his debt." Snickers rippled through her side of the church. Small, cruel sounds that cut through the sacred atmosphere like knives. She felt him tense beside her, saw his jaw clench, watched something break behind his eyes. The pastor, oblivious, continued. If anyone has objections to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. Wait. Her voice rang out clear and strong. Stop. The church went silent. Not the peaceful silence of reverence. The shocked silence of disbelief. 200 people held their breath. He went pale. This was it. She was calling it off. She'd finally had enough of her family's judgment. Or maybe she'd realized they were right, or maybe... She turned to face the congregation. Turned away from him, still holding his hand but addressing everyone else. I need to say something, she announced. Before we go any further. His heart hammered so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Baby, she said. And he realized she was talking to him now. I'm sorry. Time stopped. This was it. The rejection he'd been terrified of. The moment everything fell apart. I'm sorry, she continued, voice strengthening, that my family has been treating you like you're not enough, like your worth is measured by your paycheck instead of your character. Wait, what? When I met you, she said, and now she was talking to the whole church, making them all witnesses. You were reading to a kid who everybody else had given up on. You stayed 2 hours past your volunteer shift because that little boy needed someone to believe in him. Her mother made a sound, half gasp, half sob. You've brought me dinner at the hospital when I was working doubles and couldn't leave. You've held me when I've cried about patients I couldn't save. You've shown up every single day, even when my family made you feel unwelcome. She turned to her mother specifically. Mama, you raised me on scripture. 1 Samuel, chapter 16, verse 7. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. You taught me that, so let me do it. Let me honor the heart standing in front of me. Her mother was fully crying now. So was her aunt. Even her uncle was wiping his eyes. She turned back to him, took both his hands, and he could see she was shaking. I don't care, she said, voice breaking. If we live in that tiny apartment forever, I don't care if we drive that beat-up car until the wheels fall off. I don't care if we eat ramen 3 nights a week for the rest of our lives. Tears streamed down her face. You are enough. You have always been enough. And I'm sorry I didn't say this sooner. I'm sorry I let them make you doubt yourself for even 1 second. The church was silent except for the sound of grown adults crying. Her cousin, who'd made the comment, looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stare at this woman who was defending him, choosing him, loving him out loud in front of everyone who'd ever doubted. So I'm sorry, she finished. But right now I just want to marry you. The pastor, tears in his own eyes, cleared his throat. Well then, let us continue. They exchanged vows through tears, promised to love in sickness and health for richer or poorer, and that phrase hit different now, hit like a prophecy neither of them fully understood yet. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. The church erupted. 200 people on their feet, clapping, crying, celebrating love that had just proven itself in the most public way possible. As they kissed, he whispered against her lips, I have something to tell you. She whispered back, I know. We'll talk later. Just be here with me now. And for one perfect moment, everything was right in the world. The reception was planned for the community center where they'd met. Folding tables decorated with simple centerpieces. A grocery store sheet cake that cost $40. A playlist of old-school R&B because they couldn't afford a DJ. It was perfect. It was exactly what she'd wanted. Simple. Real. Full of the people who'd actually shown up in their lives. His mother, still playing her role as Aunt Patricia from out of town, helped serve punch. His father worked the sound system. His company's executives mingled in polo shirts and khakis, committed to the charade even now. They had their first dance to a song about being adored, just being adored, and she whispered, This is all I ever needed. There's something you need to see, he whispered back. That's when they heard it. The sound of car engines. Expensive car engines. The music stopped. Everyone turned toward the community center's front windows. 3 black Cadillac Escalades pulled up outside. Fresh off the lot, windows tinted, the kind of vehicles that didn't belong in this neighborhood. The doors opened. His mother stepped out. But not Aunt Patricia in her department store dress. The real her. Custom designer gown that probably cost more than the average person's annual salary. Diamonds at her throat that caught the light like stars. Hair and makeup professionally done. Flawless. Behind her, like an entourage from another world, came the rest of them. City council members. Business moguls. A famous musician who'd grown up in this city and never forgotten his roots. Representatives from the mayor's office. The community center, full of people in their Sunday best from outlet stores, went absolutely silent. Her mother stood up so fast her chair fell over backward. Who? What is happening? His mother, his real mother, in all her elegant glory, smiled. Her voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. We're relocating this celebration to its proper venue, she announced. The real reception has been waiting. The cars are here to transport everyone. Her uncle found his voice. Lady, who the hell are you? Her smile was kind but commanding. I'm his mother, and we have much to celebrate. They put her and him in one car, alone. As soon as the door closed, sealing them in leather-scented silence, she turned to him. He started talking, words tumbling out. The challenge from his father. The 2 years of living a different life. The fear that had driven every decision. The lies that had built up like walls between them. She let him talk. Didn't interrupt. Just listened as he confessed everything. Laid his soul bare. Explained the fear and the grief and the desperate need to know he could be loved for who he was, not what he had. When he finally ran out of words, she spoke. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Your full name is James Robert Harrison III. Your family owns Harrison and Associates. Your company's net worth is approximately $340 million. Your father challenged you to live without the family name to prove yourself. You've been lying to me for 2 years about who you really are. He stared at her, shock rendering him speechless. How long have you known? He finally managed. 3 months. The car suddenly felt too small, too hot, too suffocating. You knew. His voice cracked. For 3 months you knew, and you never said anything? You had your reasons, she said simply. I trusted that. But then her voice changed. The calm cracked, and underneath was anger. Real, justified anger. But I am angry, she said, turning to face him fully. Not about the money. I don't care about the money. I'm angry about the test. You were testing me, and that wasn't fair. I was testing myself, he started. No, she cut him off, fierce. You didn't trust me. I showed you every single day who I was. I chose you when my family told me not to. I defended you in that church in front of everyone I know. And you couldn't trust it. You couldn't trust me. My brother, he tried to explain. I'm not her, she said, and her voice broke. I'm not whoever hurt you. I'm not your brother's girlfriend. I'm me. I'm the woman who chose you in that apartment with roaches. I'm the woman who said yes to that pawn shop ring. I'm the woman who just stood up in front of God and everybody and told them you were enough. He was crying now, fully crying. You're right, he whispered. You're right, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She took a shaky breath. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to this reception. You're going to donate every penny it costs to the ICU at my hospital. Every penny. Done, he said immediately. And we're keeping that apartment. I don't care what your real one looks like. That's our home, where we built our real life. Okay. And you're never lying to me again. Not to protect me. Not to protect yourself. We're partners. Equals. That's the only way this works. Equals, he repeated. I promise. She studied his face for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached for his hand. I love you, she said. Not your money. Not your last name. But you have to let me. You have to actually trust that. I do, he said. God, I do. I'm just learning how. They arrived at the venue, a historic building with soaring ceilings and chandeliers that cost more than cars. The ballroom was decorated like something from a magazine. Ice sculptures, a live jazz band, tables set for 300 people. Her mother walked in and literally sat down on the floor. Just sat, right there in the entryway, overwhelmed. His mother approached her, elegant and kind, and helped her to a chair. "Mrs. Thompson," she said gently, "your daughter is extraordinary. She chose my son when she thought he had nothing. That's the kind of woman we've prayed he'd find." Her mother looked up, mascara running. "I almost convinced her not to marry him." "But you didn't," his mother said. "And she didn't listen anyway. That's how you know you raised her right. She knows her own mind, her own heart." Out on the terrace, overlooking the city lights, she laid down the law. $250,000 to the ICU, she said. "That's what this party cost, isn't it?" "Something like that," he admitted. "Every penny. To the unit that saves lives. Not to make you look good. Because it's right. I promise. And we're starting a scholarship fund. For kids from our neighborhood who want to go into teaching." "I love that," he said, meaning it. "And you're keeping your volunteer hours at the center. Not as charity. As coach. As the guy who believes in kids. Always," he promised. She looked at him, really looked at him. "I meant what I said in that church. You're enough. But you have to believe it too. That's the work you still have to do." He pulled her close, held her like she might disappear. "Teach me," he whispered. "Teach me how to believe it. Every day," she said. "For the rest of our lives." Inside, the celebration continued. Her mother stood up, walked to the microphone and asked to speak. The room quieted. "I owe my daughter and my new son-in-law an apology," she began, voice shaking. "I grew up poor. Real poor. Not budget carefully poor. Go hungry poor. I promised myself my children would never know that fear." She looked at him, standing with his new wife. "So when my daughter brought home a teacher, all I could see was my own mother, working herself to death for pennies. I couldn't see what my daughter saw. A good man." Her voice strengthened. "I judged you by your bank account when I should have judged you by your actions. You loved my daughter when you thought you had nothing else to offer but yourself. And baby, that's everything. That's the only thing that actually matters." She looked at her daughter. "Forgive me, baby. I taught you to see hearts, and then I forgot my own lesson." Mother and daughter embraced while 300 people cried. Her uncle approached him later, looking sheepish. "So," he said, "about that car detailing business." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Let's talk Monday. For real." Her uncle pulled out a worn folder. Inside was an actual business plan. Mobile luxury detailing for corporate clients. It was thorough, smart, actually brilliant. "Why didn't you show me this before?" he asked. "Pride," her uncle admitted. "Figured you couldn't help anyway. Didn't want charity." "This isn't charity," he said, reading through the plan. "This is solid. Let's build it together. Real partners. Equal split." They shook hands, and her uncle's eyes got wet. Even her cousin, the one who'd made the comment in church, approached. She looked ashamed. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I was jealous. You always knew what you wanted. Never needed anyone's approval. I've been dating for money, and I'm miserable." She hugged her cousin. "It's not too late to choose different." 6 months later, they were back at the community center. But not for a party. For class. They co-taught financial literacy to teenagers every Tuesday night. Used real talk, real numbers, real stories about living on a tight budget and making it work. "Here's what I learned living on a teacher's salary," he told the kids. And they hung on every word because he'd actually done it. After class, a student approached. "Mr. Harrison, is it true you're rich?" He looked at his wife, standing beside him with her hand on her growing belly. 6 months pregnant with their first child. "Depends how you measure," he said. "Money-wise? Yeah. But the real wealth." He pointed at her. "Right there." The kid made a face. "That's corny, Mr. Harrison." "It is," he agreed, laughing. And it's also true. That Sunday, both families gathered for dinner. 3 generations around one table. They were planning the baby's future. No trust fund until they're 30, she declared. His mother nearly choked on her wine. What? I'm serious. They work. They earn. They learn who they are before they learn what they have. His father laughed so hard he had to wipe his eyes. Your wife is diabolical. I love it. As they were leaving, his father handed him an envelope. Inside were deeds to 2 buildings in the old neighborhood. The note read, "For the community that raised your wife and taught you what matters. Build something that lasts." In the car, she looked at the deeds. Community center in one building, she said. Affordable housing in the other. I was thinking the exact same thing, he said. She looked at him, smiled that smile that had first made him fall in love. We're going to mess this kid up, aren't we? Completely, he agreed. With too much love and not enough pretending. They drove back to their neighborhood. To their 2-bedroom apartment with no roaches. Paid for with his teacher's salary because that's what they'd agreed on. His wealth sat in accounts, managed by others, used for good but not for them. Not for their daily life. Because they'd learned something most people never figure out. The richest person isn't the one with the biggest bank account. It's the one who's loved for exactly who they are. Seen fully and chosen anyway. And she'd learned something too. That trust is a gift you give, not a prize someone earns. That love means letting people have their journey, even when you could shortcut it. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone figure out their own worth. Their baby would grow up in that apartment for the first few years. Would learn to walk on floors that weren't marble, to play in a park that was free, to understand that wealth means nothing if you don't know who you are without it. And when that child was old enough to understand, they'd tell the whole story. The test that wasn't really a test. The lies that led to truth. The love that survived deception and came out stronger. Because that's the real inheritance. Not money. Not buildings. Not a name. The inheritance is knowing you're enough. Being loved for who you are. And loving someone else the same way. Fully, honestly, without conditions. That's the wealth that lasts. That's the legacy worth building. And that's how a billionaire learned to be rich. The lessons here run deep. First, real love sees you. Not your circumstances, not your potential, not what you could become, but who you are right now. Second, tests built on deception, no matter how well-intentioned, poison the very thing they're trying to protect. Third, the courage to be vulnerable, to be fully known, is the foundation of any lasting partnership. Fourth, generational trauma around money and security can make us push away the very things we claim to want for our children. And finally, wealth is meaningless if you don't know who you are without it. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it moved you, if it made you think differently about love or money or trust, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me your thoughts. Would you have done what she did? Could you marry someone for love over security? I want to hear your stories, your perspectives, your hearts. And if you're hungry for more stories like this, real, emotional, raw, check out the next video. I promise it'll be worth your time. Until then, remember, choose love, choose truth, and never apologize for either one.